Hey again, YouTube. It's me, Johnny, back at it again with another video. And on today's show, I actually want to talk about a interesting subject that I know it's not really heavily debated, or at least not to the extent of who's belongs on this list. But today I actually want to talk about who I feel are the 10 greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Now, everybody's list is fluid and different. I did my list based on what those players were in the time they played. So I didn't, for example, look at today's era versus that era. I just looked at it like when they played, how good were they? But let's dive in here on today's list and let's go on my number 10 quarterback of all time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Dan Marino. So I know a lot of people out there, crap on Dan Marino because he never won a Super Bowl. But I think a lot of people in the NFL community does recognize that it does take having a really good team, even if your quarterback happens to be good. And Dan Marino, when he played, was the best thrower of the football ever. Of course, he did win a regular season MVP, which is pretty great. And when he retired, he did hold all the passing records. And for the era which he played, when passing wasn't that big of a deal, when people relied more heavily on the run game, that's actually a pretty impressive feat. So that's why I have Dan Marino at number 10. Let's go to my number 9 quarterback. And I know I'm going to get some hate from this for some people because he's such a beloved quarterback in the city that he played. But Drew Brees, I have at number 9. Of course, he won the Super Bowl and beat my Colts. Peyton, please don't throw that. Oh, sorry. But anyway, all right, let me get back on track. But anyway, he won the Super Bowl, and when he retired, Drew Brees, of course, had most of, if not all of the passing records when he retired as well. During his era, he was known as one of the best quarterbacks ever. He was never thought of as the best quarterback in the league, which is why he never won an MVP. He was never an all-pro. He just happened to play in an era with quarterbacks who were better than him. But Drew Brees is still an all-time great, belongs on this list, and that's why I have him at number 9. Let's go to number 8 on my list, and I have Johnny Unitas. He is a 3-time NFL championship winner back before the Super Bowl was a thing. Of course, he did win the Super Bowl once, and he was a 3-time league MVP. I know when you go and you look up Johnny Unitas and you pull up his stats, if you go to Pro Football Reference, for people who like to look those type of things up, his stats aren't going to blow you away when you look at the fact that he only completed 54.6% of his passes. But for the era of which Johnny Unitas played, he was certainly an all-time great quarterback. In his era, he was a 5-time All-Pro, which is still pretty impressive. And I know, again, we live in a stat-driven society and league now, but in the era in which Johnny Unitas played, he was, if not the best quarterback, he was certainly one of them. I think he played in the era with Sammy Baugh and all that, but Johnny Unitas, number 8 on my list. Let's go to number 7 on my list. So, this guy, I know a lot of people don't like him too much now. And I'm certainly one of those people because, he was reverse Robin Hooding the people of Mississippi. But even with that being said, as a football player, Brett Favre was certainly and is one of the all-time great quarterbacks in spite of him stealing from poor people. But back to his football career. Of course, he won a Super Bowl championship during that time, during his time playing. He was a 3-time regular season MVP, and at the time when he played, he was certainly recognized as, if he wasn't the best quarterback in the league, he was certainly up there as considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league when he played. I mean, a lot of people, always talked about, how Brett Favre was a gunslinger and, people found his style of play pretty fun. With that being said, he was also known for throwing a lot of interceptions and actually putting your team in harm's way when he had the ball. I still remember the famous line that Shannon Sharp actually said, shout out to Uncle Shay, but when he said that, hey, just be patient, he's going to throw us one. And in that Super Bowl, when they played the Denver Broncos, he threw him a pick. So even though Brett Favre is an all-time great, I can't put him any higher than 7. So let's go to another Green Bay quarterback that is still currently playing, but I still believe belongs on this list, and that is Aaron Bleepin Rodgers. Aaron, my number 6 quarterback. So, of course, he's a one-time Super Bowl champ. I believe he won that Super Bowl's MVP as well. He is a 4-time regular season MVP, and I think he sits one behind the all-time, which is Peyton Manning with 5, I believe. So, look, Aaron Rodgers, for whether you like him or not, before a guy came along who's currently playing, I believe was the greatest thrower to quarterback that I had ever seen in my life. The young man can spin it. Now, obviously, in his advanced, since he's an older quarterback now, we'll see what type of impact he has on the New York Jets. But with that being said, as far as his place in history goes, Aaron Rodgers certainly belongs here on the list. He was considered a few years the best quarterback playing. So that's why I have him at number 6. These 5 quarterbacks in the top 5, I don't think, well, I mean, I guess it could be debated, but I think these were the 5 greatest quarterbacks in the NFL history. Let's actually talk about number 5, who was a guy who I think a lot of people forget how great he was, and that's in John Elway. John Elway was the greatest prospect of a quarterback coming out of college when he came out, before, Andrew Luck rolled around. But he, in his playing career, of course, he was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a 1-time regular season MVP winner. He actually also won the MVP one of those Super Bowl years as well. When he played, again, he was known as one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the league. I know early on a lot of people gave him a lot of grief because he would get to the Super Bowl. I think he got there 3 or 4 times and didn't win, right? But that was because he was dragging those teams to the Super Bowl. I like to actually think of John Elway to be a modern day, to bring in the basketball terms, a modern day LeBron James, somebody who could carry a team pretty far in the playoffs and sometimes even to the finals when they weren't supposed to be there. But then, of course, we get to the championship game and get crushed because, well, his teams weren't as good. Now, with that being said, John Elway, he could do everything. He could run it and he could throw it early on in his career. He was a dual threat quarterback before that was actually even a talked about thing. John Elway, I have on my list at number 5. Let's go to my number 4 quarterback in NFL history, and he's still playing, but I don't see how anybody can deny this guy shouldn't be this high on the list and will probably one day be ranked even higher on this list and jump some of the guys I actually have ahead of him. But my homeboy, Patrick Mahomes, I have as the 4th greatest quarterback in league history already. Yes, I know he's still playing, but the guy is impressive. So as we know, he just won the Super Bowl, right? So he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, one of 3 players to actually win multiple Super Bowl MVPs, multiple regular season MVPs. It's only like him, I think Tom Brady and Joe Montana, I believe, which is just highly impressive to be in that company. 2-time All-Pro. Patrick Mahomes is great. Coming out, I think during his rookie season, I think people, not his rookie season because he didn't play, but the year he actually played, his first year playing, I guess I should say, I think when people saw him, they knew, okay, that young man right there, that young man can spin it. And with that offense and running with Andy Reid, yeah, he was going to be something special. And I know a lot of people kind of hold that against him, like, oh, you play with Andy Reid and all that. But think about this. Before Andy Reid got him, Andy Reid was a very good coach, obviously, and I think underrated because he had got to the Super Bowl, but he had lost early on when he had Donovan McNabb. But this just shows the value of having an all-time great quarterback. It can pole vault you into actually being considered an all-time great coach. Not just a very good coach, but an all-time great coach. Patrick Mahomes certainly has done that for Andy Reid just as much as Andy Reid has done that for Patrick Mahomes. He is currently playing. We're going to see how many records he holds when he retires, depending on how long he plays. But in the offense, the way they play now, he's probably going to hold. He might catch Tom Brady in a lot of those stats. Maybe not the yards because that's tough, but I mean, if he plays another 12 to 14 years, yeah, he probably going to pass Tom Brady in those stats too. So I don't know if he's going to catch him in Super Bowls. I don't think he's going to do that because Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowls. I don't think he's going to do that, but I do think when he's all said and done, he has a good shot of being certainly maybe considered the GOAT or at least, right up there with Tom Brady. But that's by half Patrick Mahomes at number 4. Let's go to my number 3 quarterback, and that is my guy who played for my team. And yes, I know, Johnny, you played for my team, but I wasn't born then. Talking about guy I saw play. That's Peyton Manning. 2-time Super Bowl champion, one-time Super Bowl MVP. He was a regular season 5-time, like Booker T said, 5-time regular season MVP award winner. When Peyton Manning retired at the time, he held every single passing record there was to hold outside of interceptions because Brett Favre had set that thing so far out that no one was going to catch him. Also, when Peyton Manning was playing, he was known as the best quarterback playing, and that's even with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees being in the league. He was still known as the best, and that's why he was 7-time All-Pro, which I believe, if it's not the record, it is certainly tied with somebody. I have to look that up. But in any case, Peyton Manning pretty much, he didn't invent audibling at the line, because I believe somebody said that was happening. He actually took that from a player who played early on back in the 70s when they would do that. But he was the one who actually made it to where the quarterbacks could actually have all the checks at the line of scrimmage. He was a heck of a quarterback, and yes, I know that in the playoffs, his playoff record isn't that good. I think he's like 14-13 or something like that overall in the playoffs, and I know that last Super Bowl that he won, that Denver defense with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and them boys really actually carried him to that Super Bowl, carried the corpse of Peyton Manning to the Super Bowl. But for what he was able to accomplish in his football career, Peyton Manning is, in my opinion, currently the 3rd greatest quarterback. We'll see what Patrick Mahomes does. He has a good shot to pass him, but as of right now, Peyton Manning, number 3. Let's go to my number 2 quarterback. And look, these top 2, I don't think anybody should actually be surprised about. I don't even think it should be debated. I've heard people debate not having Joe Montana at number 2, and it just blows my mind considering the fact that how good he was when he played. And I know a lot of people like, well, he played with the Bill Walsh offense, and he actually, he had Jerry Rice. He had Dwight Clark. It's like, look, he won before he got Jerry Rice. He won after Bill Walsh retired. He went to Kansas City and got them to an AFC championship game, which they had not been in ever. So Joe Montana was a great quarterback. If you compare his stats then to what people do now, yes, they're not as flashy, but for a guy who's a 4-time Super Bowl champion, 3 of those being Super Bowl MVP, he has 2 regular season MVPs. Again, as I mentioned earlier, him, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady are the only 3 quarterbacks in league history with those stat lines, and that's the list. You get in that type of company, Joe Montana belongs to be at number 2, and you could argue that there were better quote-unquote throwers of the football than Joe Montana. Like, I think some of the people I have below him were better throwers of the football, like Aaron Rodgers. Heck, I'll even say Dan Marino was a better thrower of the football than Joe Montana, but his impact on winning and the things that Joe Montana was actually able to do when he played, I believe he belongs at number 2. If you have Joe Montana ranked a little bit lower on your list, that's well and good. But when he played, he was considered the best quarterback in the league by a lot of people. And for me, that's how you get to get on this list either by A, being considered one of the greats, but you get this high on the list being considered the best in the league. He was a 3-time All-Pro, which means that people thought he was the best quarterback in the league for at least 3 times in his career, and that's saying something when some of these people, again like Drew Brees, who made the list, was never an All-Pro. And we already know who number 1 is. That's Tom Brady. Who's shocked? Right? Tom Brady. he retired, had all the records. He has a record that I don't think is going to be broken with 7 Super Bowls. Like, I legitimately think, much like a lot of that Wayne Gretzky hockey records, I don't think that record will ever be broken in the history of life. If it does, I'm going to be dead and gone, and they probably going to be playing on the moon by the time Tom Brady record is broken for Super Bowls. And yes, he also has 3 regular season MVPs. I mean, yeah, Tom Brady, yeah, man. I mean, we ain't got to go deep into that. Tom Brady's a GOAT. We all know it. He's number 1. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my list. Oh, real quick, since I didn't mention this earlier in the video, if you actually like the content you're listening to here, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the page. But until the next video, I'll talk to you all later. Have a good day.